Most people think to stand out in this business, you need to be the first one on top of the story or the person with the loudest voice or the biggest ratings. In truth, to stand out in the news business, you just need to ask the right questions and demand the right answers.
Provoke, inform, and change. We deal with issues that other networks won't.
Academia University. Open, free, that means no tuition, with no entrance restrictions. Well, hello everybody, welcome back to the next edition of INN's Tweet Line Plus. Let me give you a time and date stamp. It is 10 hours and 17 minutes into the day of Sunday, December 18th, 2016. And we're coming back. We're doing another episode. We're trying to change up our schedule a little bit. But also things bear repeating, particularly since we are in the midst of a coup. We don't know what's going to happen with the Electoral College. And keeping these reports coming out focused on the Electoral College, the coup that's going on in there, is a way of sort of keeping the eye on it, letting people know, or letting these people who are plotting the coup understand that they're being watched. This is the whole purpose here. The next purpose is because we are doing analysis here. We are doing this level of research, and as you can see, the video, the show is being shot at all hours a day. Basically, this is my called ad hoc notes. These are my initial gathering of notes on particular topics of research and so on and so forth. And the analysis does sometimes bear going over again to clear certain things up. Tangents are good. Tangents are good sometimes, and in many cases they're needed because they provide extra information that may not be there initially and are needed to place the topic, what you're talking about, in context. The problem is there's not always enough time within the half-hour span to bring in all the context and sort of get all the points across clearly. And so this is sort of the case here, is that we're going back over things. It's sort of a new aspect to Tweetline Plus. We're not necessarily going to be focusing on the immediate headlines, but rather we're going to go back in and do some of the analysis that may have been glossed over the initial time. The links are still down below. The areas of suggested study are down below. In other words, these are things you should read through and sort of consider as you go along. And as I said, I encourage you to go do your own research. You can do as much or as little as you want. I'm not going to be marking you on this or giving you a quiz or a test or an exam or anything like that. It's purely if this is something that interests you, you need to go do the research. And I'm going to cover some of the stuff that Lionel LeBron has gone. That's Lionel of LionelNation. His last name is not Nation. It's, as he stated in his video, his last name is not Nation. If you go back and do a bit of research, this is what doing background research is. He gives you links down below, right, in the description. Follow these links. And a lot of them, he has his law firm there. He's got everything listed out there. And so you find out that his last name is LeBron. This is where I have my problem here. For a while there, I was taking the last name, thinking the first name LeBron James, the basketball player, LeBron James, and mixing the two up. You know, it wasn't intentional. It's just that as soon as I heard the term LeBron, the first thing that popped into my mind, in terms of the association, was the basketball player. And so as I went out and do the news here. Every time I mentioned Lionel, I certainly inadvertently replaced Lionel with Lionel LeBron James, the basketball player, and it was an inadvertent slip. And I do that sometimes. I'll hear a name, mix the names up, and give you the wrong name. But the points are there, and this is what happens in notes. Notes are not designed to be perfect. They do have their little bits and pieces of fluff in them, And they're not in any way, shape, or form designed to be perfect. So, anyways, I've got my iced tea here. I've got my my whole setup, the iced tea, and I have my chocolate bar. That's for after the filming here, or the videoing, or whatever you want to call it. LeBron, oh, there we go again. LeBron, no, that's his last name. Lionel of LionelNation, in his last few videos, and he's done this. He's looking at analyzing the American media, and a lot of this is the problem. And he's pointed this out. He states that the problem with Americans is that we have this ideal of exceptionalism, where the Americans feel that they are more intelligent than, let's say, others. But the thing is, he's recognizing that the Americans are living in a bubble, but once again pulls out this American exceptionalism and assumes that only Americans are living in this particular bubble. Right? So, again, the American exceptionalism. He's sort of getting a little bit of a feedback loop there. It's not until you, like I was born in Boston, and my parents are Bostonians, even though we came from immigrant families. My grandmother comes from Syria, and my grandmother on my mom's side comes from Syria. The grandmother on my dad's side comes from Thessaloniki in Greece. That's really close to Turkey. It's actually on the Turkish border there, and is actually considered part of the Asiatic Greeks. We're not really. We're not European Greeks. We're Asiatic Greeks. We're Pan-Asians. But we're white enough that we can be offered the entrance into whitedom. You know, oh, you look white enough, so come on into whiteness. Come into whiteness. Accept our ideas, and you know, that's fine as long as you accept our ideas as superior to everything else. You can be European and you can be white. This is what's presented to a lot of people who sort of sit on the borders now between Europe and the darkness of the world outside of Europe, the if you will, the unwashed masses. And Europe has always been sold as this panacea, this golden enlightenment that it really isn't. But the enticement of Europe, the sort of the lure of Europe, has been enough to pull a lot of people into its sphere. And where I'm going with this is that what ended up happening is, in order to pull Turkey into its sphere, and that's what it did, you have the Young Turks committing the genocide. My people wasn't just as against the Armenians; it was more than just the Armenians. There were Greeks involved, there were Syrians. There's a whole bunch of people involved who were part of the so-called Armenian genocide. And the Young Turks were people they were Turks who wanted to be European. They had adopted the socialist philosophy, the progressive philosophy, and they were hell-bent to impose their ideas. And so they killed a lot of people just to enforce their ideas. And this is something you can see in almost any communist revolution. You will see the number of people they killed in order to get their points across. You see this. You see the same thing with this with the Electoral College coup. What's happening? You go around, you start looking up to see what's happening. The electors on the Electoral College are being inundated. Fax, telephone, emails, and people showing up at their door, demanding that they switch their vote and not vote for Donald Trump. And you see what's happening in the mainstream media. Same thing that's going on. There's complete harassment, and you see the violence in the street done by the alternative, by the liberal left, the socialists, who call themselves progressives. And this, what we are seeing in the United States with Donald Trump, is not an isolated thing. This is what we're seeing what we saw with ISIS. So, oh, that's just ISIS. These are Islamic extremists. No. You go into the history of Islam, this is what you find. ISIS was doing what Islam has always done. You can also see this in the Young Turks. You can see this in Turkey. You can see the slave. This is why they were selling the slaves into Turkey, because these slave markets already existed in Turkey, and they have since the Ottomans came into Turkey, because Turkey was initially Constantinople. It was part of the Byzantine Empire. When the Ottomans, the Islamic warriors came into Turkey, the slave markets existed from then. Because the Christians under the Byzantine Empire were ordered to end slavery. It was a sin. A sin basically means sinister. The early Christians viewed that it was sinister to have slaves. That if Christ adopted us as from servants to sons, just the way you have in the prodigal son, then therefore any king or queen or anyone with a position of authority has to adopt their servants as children of the household or set them free. In other words, servants are no longer separated by the non-genetic link. They are now family. They're adopted into the family or they're set free. This was the ruling for the Byzantine Empire. This was the standard. It wasn't until you have the papacy come in about 1,000 years later that you have the papacy say, no, the Pope is Christ on earth. He's the replacement for Christ on earth. That's the Vicar of Christ. That's his official title, or Antichrist in Greek. The Christ owns everything, including all the people. And he can use them as slaves and whatever he wants to use them for. Right? And that became the feudal system. The European feudal system was developed by the papacy. And it was the shift in Christianity from the non-slavery condition where everyone was family to an institutional situation where everybody beneath the church was part of the church institution, and then they were owned and slaves of the institution. And this is why the Greeks, and you go back in the early Greek writing of this, of what was happening at the time, and some of these documents are still around. They clearly viewed the Pope as an antichrist, even though that's actually what his title is. His title is Antichrist. I mean, he didn't. It's not that someone gave him the title of Antichrist. The papacy gave itself the title of Antichrist. Right? The Vicar of Christ. The Vicar of Christ is Antichrist. And so you have people like myself, Karathanasius, that's an indication of my last name, the Kara part, the K-A-R-A, even though my last name is now spelled C-A-R-R-A-S, the original, the Greeks did not have the C there, the way we have the C now, and so there was a K in there. Same thing with Kabbalism. People were spelling Kabbalism with a C. It has actually a K. And it is from these ancient origins. But the thing is the point here is that there's this sort of push to create a greater Europe, a greater world control of Europe. In other words, colonialism. And it began with the papacy. And this is why in many cases, as much as you don't like religion, you actually have to go in and understand what religion is all about and what these different religions are. And they're not all the same. You need to go in and understand how they work, how they operate, and how they impact history, and how that history is now impacting us today. Because a lot of this is historical. It's not sitting isolated from history. This is what the New World Order is. The whole New World Order has a history that they've been progressing towards. And you go look at the history of socialism, of the progressive Academia University. Open, free, that means no tuition, no entrance restrictions.
INN, provoke, inform and change. We deal with issues that other networks won't.
Academia University. Going beyond textbooks, you begin to see how all these different religions, including Kabbalism, or Kabbalah, properly it's Kabbalah. Into an English translation, you have Kabbalahism, because it becomes the philosophy, the idea, the religion even though with Christianity, you just have Christianity, and there's no fundamental distinction, but you do have to go in and say the distinction, because Roman Catholicism is not early Christianity. It is actually, Roman Catholicism, I'm going to make this statement here. Roman Catholicism, I'm going to make this statement here. Roman Catholicism is not Christianity. Neither is Protestantism. Neither are the Protestants. Or Protestantism. That is not Christianity either. There is a fundamental shift that pulls them out of the sphere of Christianity and back into the sphere of paganism. In other words, the facade is Christianity, but the underneath is pagan. Right? Same thing I'm going to talk about now with Kabbalism. Kabbalism, or Kabbalah, actually Kabbalah, is the proper term, just like Hanukkah, Kabbalah, right? Kabbalah has the face or the facade of Judaism. But it is not Judaism. It is the Canaanite religion of Baal. It is paganism. It's the same type of paganism that was in the facade of the Roman Catholics. Same type of paganism that is in the facade of the Protestant. These are all pagan religions with a facade of either Judaism or Christianity. And the thing is that this facade pulls in a lot of people. This is what it's designed to do. It's designed to pull in a lot of people. And what it does is it's a misogynist technique where they massage the ego and tell you, oh, how great you are, how wonderful, that you need to use these powers of yours for good, for the common good of man, that you can change society for the better. In other words, they pull you in with a sweetness, with the whole concept of philanthropy. It's not until you get underneath into the Kabbalah rituals that they have introduced you to something called sex magic, that sex is good. And here they are once again, flipping the truth. They tell you that the orgasm is the highest form of magic that you can have. During the orgasm, that you have this magic that flows out into the universe. You are now connected to the universe and can converse with the various gods of the universe. This is the oneness within the universe. You can find this within Buddhism, but particularly within the tantric view of religion. You go into the tantricism. Look at the Indian tantric, the Hindu tantric, or the Buddhist tantric, and you'll find the same sex magic in there. And they talk about the Kundalini. These are things you have to look up. And this is again this is the principle of orgasm, the final act of sex, as being magical, as being your source of magic. This is where the power comes from. And this is where you understand now. You go back into the Masonic Lodge and see the aprons that they're wearing, and understand that the apron covers and protects their holies of holies, which is basically their male and female anatomy. And understand, for them, this is the same sex magic, where the orgasm becomes their power, becomes their key, their means of communication with God, or what they believe is God or gods. Because they believe in multiple gods, they believe in alien beings. This is how the UFOs get into here. I'm sorry, Lionel, but if you're into UFOs, you need to look at the religious aspect of it, because a lot of the Masonic organizations, a lot of this history behind it, all view that, and this includes the Vril Society, view these gods as aliens, as entities from multiple dimensions. This is where you have the same thing. That's why the SS and the Nazis spent 10 years in India and Tibet understanding Tibetan Buddhism. This is what they went to find. You know, you say, I'm not one for religion. I can't really get into all that type of stuff. Well, if you're into UFOs, you need to, because this is what the history is. Right? You want to understand what's happening today, why we are in the situations we're in today? Well, it's history. And part of that history is religion. Religion is heavily intertwined with religion, including science. People don't understand that there is no such thing as atheism. Atheism really hasn't fundamentally existed. Atheism was designed, and you go back to understand this, how there were two worlds created, two worldviews created. And this was done by Edward Bernays, the nephew of Sigmund Freud. And if you want to do this, go Sigmund Freud, Edward Bernays, and then take a look at William Wundt. From William Wundt, you go to Kinsey. And you'll understand how a lot of the progressive path emerges. Because Kinsey, and even some of the earlier psychologists, have contact with Aleister Crowley. Aleister Crowley leads them back into Kabbalism and Eastern, what they call Eastern mysticism. So there's a huge connection there. It is from the Vril Society and these connections here that you have with Edward Bernays, that you create something called a dual society. There is a public view, and then there's a hidden secret view. Atheism was designed to be the public view, to pull people away from the secrets of Kabbalah, the secrets of the Masonic Order, the secrets of the Illuminati. And you got to understand here, because of what the Roman Catholics did going into the East during the Crusades, they brought back. The main books they brought back that ended up in these secret societies were the Kabbalist books. They brought back Kabbalism. This is what Sir Isaac Newton and Leibniz, who developed calculus, were both alchemists. Alchemy was based on Kabbalism. These were Kabbalistic understandings, and it's through Kabbalism that they developed the mathematical codes to understand how language can be codified. And part of this codification, because they were borrowing from the school called the Pythagoreans, this is where calculus came from. It was an ancient mathematical technique, was passed all the way through and was picked up by Leibniz and Sir Isaac Newton. And Sir Isaac Newton, so this work from the basics of physics. It wasn't atheistic. These people were Kabbalists. They were alchemists. They believed in the beyond. But what happened is you had a public faith develop that science with atheism, that we knew everything. Well, behind the scenes, and this is where you had with the Nazis, and this is where they have the Operation Paperclip. Go take a look at that. Then you also go take a look at the Vril Society, and you'll see how quantum physics emerges from that. And what quantum physics is the re-intertwangling, in many ways, of science with religion. Even though that path had never really ended, it appears now as that this is what's happening again. But it's not. It's not something new. It's something that's continuous. It just was hidden. And why is quantum mechanics, a lot of the background of quantum mechanics, hidden? Well, because quantum mechanics is what was used to develop the atomic bomb. And the governments did not want this information, the atomic secrets, floating around unguarded. This is what they did with Tesla. Why is Tesla's work gone? Why did the government seize everything? Well, because it could be used to develop weapons. You're looking at weapons development here. And now you begin to understand how a lot of this sort of why the media was in bed with the CIA. Right? The CIA started within the media. It emerged from the media. So it shouldn't come as a surprise that the media is now involved with the CIA and spreading disinformation, because this is what they were designed to do initially. And this was done this has been done with the BBC. The BBC was heavily in bed with MI5, the military intelligence services, both MI5 and MI6. The same thing was done in Europe. The Germans did the same things. The Nazis did the same things. Their papers were all involved. This is a standard thing, and they've done the same thing to all these people. They from high to low. They had cartoons for the low people who couldn't read. You have somewhat comical papers. You know, the comedians, the music you have for the people who are in the middle. Right? They've always had music. Go back and look at the musicians of the Renaissance. You'll find they're singing about the same thing. Look at Shakespeare. Right? They're talking about the topics of the day. This is how they got the information out to the masses. Then, of course, for the kings and queens of the higher up, they had other things. Right? But again, getting out the same information. It's just at different levels. Here we have now. We have tabloid news like the Inquirer. We have the New York Post putting out one set of things, and then we have the higher up. You have the Washington Post, the Washington Times, the New York Times, the New Yorker, right? The highfalutin, you know. And you have, what do you have in the middle? You have Jon Stewart. You have Jimmy Fallon, the clowns from SNL who think that they're intelligent. Satire is based on truth. Mocking has no truth to it whatsoever. What SNL does is takes political issues, particularly from the left perspective, and then mocks the right. There is many cases, more often than not, there is no fundamental truth to what they're doing. They're clowns. And they're designed to entertain a set of mass who think that they are intellectual, that these are typically college-educated people. And they're designed to swing these people, into a perspective that the socialization, the socialist understanding that they received in college as a bachelor, without going any further into detail in things, into the history of things, was sufficient that they are now above everybody else, that they are the elite, that they know what's going on. And it's this massaging of the ego that pulls in people like Erdogan, and then earlier on, people like Mossadegh. What was the problem? Why did the United States overthrow Mossadegh? It wasn't necessarily the United States. It was Britain who did it was the initiator of the overthrow of Mossadegh. And here was the problem. Mossadegh had dared to challenge the hegemony and state that he wants to be treated as equal to the Europeans. And this is what you need to understand about the UN. The UN is not multinational. It is the EU socialist body. It is the New World Order. And a lot of the programs that are being done around the world, including the sex education in the United States, emerges and is pushed by the UN. The attacks on Russia is pushed by the UN because they did not accept the sexual agenda of the New World Order. You can go back to the games in Sochi, the Olympic Games in Sochi. What's going on now is a punishment for Russia for not accepting homosexuality the way the UN stated it should. You see the same thing going on in Africa. The African countries, in order to get financial aid, food aid, and aid for the poor, need to accept the sexual standards of the UN, being pushed by the UN. This includes Planned Parenthood and several others that teach open sexual contact between adults and children. In other words, they're teaching pedophilia. And pedophilia is part of the social left because they view people as animals, and because sex with animals is not a problem, and neither should be sex between anyone in society shouldn't be a problem either, because we're just simply animals. And this is what Kinsey has done. Kinsey has gone in and done these studies. This was done in the 50s and earlier as to what the actual orgasm techniques were with kids. He experimented on children with orgasms. This was done in the university. It was done under review and acceptance by the socialists around him, because don't forget the university environment is a socialist environment. And his view was that children could have orgasms, including babies. And what did he define as an orgasm? He defined it as screaming, crying, trying to escape. So in other words, he described rape and views rape as orgasm. This is the Kinsey book that is now the basis of all sex education programs in the United States and around the world. It's here in Canada too. It's pedophilia. And it's part of the socialist progressive understanding of things. And it doesn't matter who it is, Clinton, whatever it is. It doesn't matter who it is or which socialist it is. They all have the same thinking. Because they all have the same base. And so when anyone try to come in and say, oh, I want to be European. The Europeans said no, because you're not white. The Europeans expect, the same thing with the New World Order, the UN, that the Europeans, the white people, will be at the top, that their thinking, their thought will be supreme, that everyone else will have to submit to their understandings. And this is the perspective they have. They have this, and it's done through this, again, the massaging of the ego, where they pump these people and say, you are absolutely right, and the people who oppose you are evil and need to be destroyed. They need to be gotten rid of. This is what we're seeing in the Trump election. We're seeing it coming out in full. Any liberal who supports the Democrats, Jill Stein, Hillary Clinton, Jesse Ventura, if you're on that list there where you're supporting a progressive movement, you are supporting pedophilia. You're supporting rape. You're supporting war, because these are wars of colonization. And all you have to do is go back and take a look at Mossadegh, look at the School of America in South America, then go take a look and see how that compares to what's going on in Africa and in the Middle East. Understand that Kabbalism is the sex magic. You see this as Pizzagate. Pizzagate is not an isolated, there's a history of this. You can track it in the UK under Labour. You can track it in both New Zealand and in Australia. Again, all under the Liberal governments. You can also track it here in Canada under the Liberal and NDP government here, including the Green Party. It is not until you get outside the socialist realm, and don't forget, understand here, that if you see someone on the right, a conservative or a Republican, talking about nationalist issues, in other words, identifying with a neocon position, they are not Republicans, they are socialists, they are progressives, but they sit on the right side with the Nazi party. They are Nazis. Understand that there is a way with Donald Trump, Donald Trump is the proof that these people are not monolithic, they do not have absolute power, and they can be controlled. We just need to stand up and do something about it. I'll see you in our next edition on Monday. Academia University, going beyond textbooks.
INN, provoke, inform and change. We deal with issues that other networks won't.
Academia University, open, free, that means no tuition, with no entrance restrictions.
Welcome to the library, and I am the librarian. I am the professor. And professor of what? Professor of physics.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light?
Free speech rules here at Democratic Earth.